Hi, everybody. I'm Monique A.J, the creator and founder of the An Intimate Conversation with Women of Color podcast, which is sponsored by Denise Consults. This podcast was created to provide women of color a platform to use our voices. So thank you so much for stopping by and enjoy today's episode. Welcome to another episode of An Intimate Conversation. I am your host, Denise A.J, and today's guest is someone that I got connected with on LinkedIn. So shout out to the power of social media. And we're going to have a good conversation and just connect with one another and let you all in on some of the things that she's doing. So I am happy to introduce you to Monique Smith. She is a consultant, adjunct professor, podcast host, co-author, magazine publisher, and executive coach. She's also a Hampton University Adjunct Professor, a co-author, magazine publisher, and a podcast host of the nationally recognized weekly podcast, A Chat in the Garden with Monique A.J. Smith. Monique, what else do you want the audience to know about you?
Well, I am a wife and a daughter. I'm a caregiver for my mom. And I'm an avid reader. I love to read. And again, go Pirates.
Awesome. And we were talking earlier about a connection that we have with the Pirates. So that's Hampton. I was sharing with her that I had actually partnered with the sailing department to create a sailing pipeline. So I'm in Detroit. I'm on a board of Detroit Community Sailing Center, and we have a youth program. And so I partnered with Hampton for that sailing pipeline. So I want to get more of our kids out on the water. And for those who are interested in sailing in college, letting them know that Hampton is an HBCU that has sailing, and it happens to be the only one. So you have over 30 years in sports management. What attracted you to this field?
I wouldn't say I became attracted. I just think I was going along my happy way, and that door just kept opening.
Okay.
So I kept scores in the 8th grade, and I was SGA president in high school. So I was planning events, and my English teacher said that I should major in PR because that's what you do. You plan events, you promote it. And I was like, oh, okay, sure. So I went to Hampton University because they said they had a PR major. They really did not. They had one course, and the course was my senior year. I was like, oh. So at Hampton University, I took everything: television, newspaper, magazine, radio, all of it, right? And so my sophomore year, there was a flyer on the bulletin board that said CIAA looking for PR interns. So I'm like, and at that time we had our own television station, and I was writing the sports copy for the TV newscaster. Because again, I kept scores in 8th grade. I knew how to tell the story of sports.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was interesting because I was one female and 3 guys. We all got the internship. It was 4 of us. And our job was to pick the player of the week and the coach of the week and type in all the stats, which again, I was familiar with because I did that in high school. Tony Massenberg and I grew up together, and he played for Lefty Driesell. He was a freshman when Lynn Bias was a senior. So I've always been one to analyze and try to tell the story of the game. And that's how I did it. I didn't know what sports information was. I know what PR was.
Right.
But sports information is it's the same. You just tell them the stories of your players, of your team. And I gravitated to that. And so my sophomore year, I did that. My junior, my senior year, I was a student assistant in sports information at Hampton University. In between that, I worked at the Pentagon. I worked at BET. I interned at the local television station. And that's when I learned TV. I didn't like TV because my creativity did not work with somebody in my ear, number one. And number two, 24 hours come up with something. And the slogans come to me very easily. And I believe in human interest stories to grab the crowd. So I chose something that I was able to promote, something that was in-house out versus somebody coming in and trying to get information. And again, I guess it's my control piece. I can control the message and the narrative. So so by being a student at Hampton, we hosted the national championship for Division II track and field, and I was assigned to do all the credentials and worked in the press box my junior year and my senior year. So by this time, I know all the other schools, and I got the word that I had a job at St. Paul's College because everybody else told the new athletic director, this is the person you need to hire. So I had a village of people telling me, oh, you can do this. Yeah. So my first job at 22 was sports information director at St. Paul's College.
Very nice. Very nice. That's awesome. And so you mentioned CIAA, right?
Mm-hmm.
Could you tell us what that is?
Oh, sorry. Central Intercollegiate Athletic Association. Division II Conference. Mm-hmm. HBCU. Yeah, I ended up working there for 13 years later on. So I went to St. Paul's College, became a sports information director. At 28, I became athletic director. And after I stayed in that role for 2 years, I went to Division I and did compliance for University of Maryland Shore. And then the commissioner said, come on back home. So I came back home to Virginia, was the PR director for the CIAA, moved up to director of championships, and then chief of staff.
Very nice. And so CIAA, I know for a number of years it was in Charlotte, but they just recently moved, is it to Baltimore?
Yeah, but see, that's the interesting thing. That's just the basketball tournament.
Got
it.
CIAA
has what? I don't know how many championships now, but that's just the basketball championship. They got football championship, they got volleyball, track and field, baseball, soccer, baseball, softball, golf, tennis, track. So the conference is made up of all those sports and not just basketball.
Got it. And, you know, that's definitely education for me because I was only aware of what was going on in Charlotte. Like people, you know, I think in March, you know, folks were like, you know, heading there in droves. And I knew it was something that I'm like, oh, I need to go at least at one point, but didn't really know a lot about what it was and definitely did not know that the CIAA represented all of those different sports. So thank you for breaking that down for us. And so for our listeners who are listening on your favorite podcast platform or watching on YouTube, as I stated, today's guest is Monique. And we are getting into the conversation. We're talking about sports. And, you know, talk to us about how you are helping athletic departments or sports organizations and individuals advance in this space.
Well, you know, as I mentioned, I've been 30 years into this. So I was the first female full-time sports information director in CIAA in 1990. Right. So it's a whole lot of first in my life. And so for me, I did not want, it's okay to be first, but it's not okay to be the last. Mm-hmm. And so for me, I want to be able to help the pipeline. And that's one of the things that I did really well within the CIAA. I held a retreat for all the senior women administrators. Okay. And one of the things was about growth and having them move to the athletic director position. So I'm already known for that. So when I put my shingle out 9 years ago as a consultant, actually those women still come to me and do executive coaching with me. Okay. But also, one of the things about advancement has a lot to do with your mindset, how you deal with no, how you deal with scenarios, how do you see that? And within 30 years, I've kind of seen a lot of it. And I can be able to role play, give them resources. Just recently, I had a young lady that's been in my circle for almost 30 years, and she just got the AD position. And she was like, I just got to be able to call on you. Well, I said, okay, well, there's a program for that, you know, because she was calling me and she said, where are you? Well, first of all, she moved and didn't come her telephone number, so I didn't answer the phone. You know what I mean? And so, but I will say that many of my mentees now have become in the AD position, so they need to have a trusted place to go to. Very similar to corporate America. Corporate America incorporated executive coaching. Usually, a supervisor will hire a coach to deal with one of their employees that they want to move up. And when that happens, I have universities have me do that. I said, you pay me this amount and I will deal with your top administrators. And I'll say to them, you know, the institution really values you because they invested in your growth. This is why I'm here.
Right. Right. And I love that. So, you know, I learned through you from a chat in the garden with Monique A.J. Smith and from your publications and whatnot and your emails. I learned that there's so many different women who are in this space, the athletic space, which we don't hear a lot of. So I appreciate you for sharing that information. So what is sports management? What exactly is sports information? How would you define either of those? Because I'm hearing they're slightly different.
Oh, very much so. So sports information is really like sports PR.
Okay.
Actually, they changed their name.
What is that?
Excuse me. Sorry. Oh my goodness. It's called, so COSADA, which is College Sports Information Directors of America, just changed their name. They rebranded themselves to Communication. I don't know. It just did it like 2 weeks ago.
Okay.
So, and I told them, I said, y'all gonna have to bear this OG.
Right.
But I knew as a communication specialist, because the reason being, you know, when I started, the most important thing was to be able to do stats. So I was one of the first to do volleyball stats.
Okay.
Because you need to have stats. I teach sports PR at Hampton University too. So you need to have stats to be able to tell your story. But the difference is people are watching things as it happened. And we really don't need a recap of the game. All right. So that's what we used to do back in the day. We would tell you what happened, who did what, and then hopefully maybe promote that person to player of the week. Well, now everybody's ready to see it live. Okay. What people want to do is try to anticipate what a person will do, which is analytics. Okay. And people use TikTok and Twitter and Instagram. They want movement. All right. So what I was training to do was to tell the story for you to follow the team. Well, now you got to be able to show what's going on in the game immediately. Okay. You got to be able to show my whole life story. So I got to, you know, have an interview with me or get me involved. And then you want to anticipate what kind of ink pen I'm going to use today. You follow me? You know, like all of that is social media. And then I got to, it is way past writing a story, getting you all confidence. So therefore, the title has got to change because it's more like when you go to a game now, you expect to be entertained at a halftime.
Right.
You know, and so somebody has to plan that. You see, so in some institutions, that's part of your game day operation, fan engagement. It's more than just sports information. So sports management is the management of the whole entity.
Okay.
And so sports management could be athletic development, which is life skills programming, preparing student athletes for life after sports. Or it could be just development, going to raise money for the athletic department. Then you got compliance, the rules and regulations to make sure you don't violate. But if you, then where's education to make sure you know not to violate? You see? So that's 4 right there. And I haven't talked about the financial piece, you know, who the requisitions, you know, the equipment.
Yeah.
You mentioned my magazine, so I just got to say this is the 4th issue. oops, okay, yeah, this is the fourth issue. The first issue had a woman equipment manager, and she helped design the football uniforms. That's why that's what I just love. It's just so many different areas.
Yeah.
I tell you another area. I'm recognizing a young lady in Parks and Rec, which is under sports management, because you probably get a degree and then you go work for Parks and Rec, which is really like community and creating activities and a tournament and things like that. And another one that, because of the magazine, this is how I meet the folks as well, plus the podcast. Another one is social workers in sport.
Okay.
Which is so much needed now, because you think about it. Social worker will help with the mental health piece. Mm-hmm. And we don't mean the mental health to throw better, jump better. We're just talking about how to deal with society, which is what we're seeing, unfortunately, with the young people and young student athletes, college student athletes, the pressure and taking their lives. So we really need to have a social worker in sports on our Rolodex.
Absolutely.
So now my students are saying, oh yeah, I think I want to engage. I think I want to do that. You know, they might have heard of sports psychology, which is still different. Because again, these agencies, they will know, and understanding that the social worlds outside have a big impact. Now, I'm not really sure how old you are, but the fact that social media, there's something with the psyche to make you automatically compare yourself. Mm-hmm. And if you're not mature enough to know that this label, what is happening today, will not necessarily have anything to do about 10 minutes, 10 weeks, 10 years from now. Their brains don't realize that yet. So all of these things have to do with sports.
And that's so interesting listening to you, because as we also talked about, my son we're pursuing sports management. He was an athlete most of his life. So it makes sense for him to want to, he's not, looking to play any sports professionally. So it makes sense for him to take that love of sports, as an athlete, and take that on a different level. And so to hear all these different options that he has under sports management is good. So this episode is dedicated to my son. So, and and all this great information that you're sharing, it's definitely useful. And I'm definitely supportive of the social worker. I was at, I think it was the Black Sports Network. They had an event. And I may not even have the name correctly, but they had an event in Atlanta in June. And I was listening to a panel, and it was a panel of agents, sports agents. And they were talking about, and it was one thing that was so interesting to me, because they were talking about how it's hard, or had been hard, for them to get Black athletes to work with them. And one of the things they said is because of the trauma that the Black young men have experienced. And that was interesting.
Trust issues.
Yeah. That was so interesting. And it made a lot of sense. So to have a social worker to be able to talk to people, or, as a resource to go to and share what you may be experiencing, your, whatever, and just to support you along the way, it's so needed. And so I'm glad that that's happening now, whether it happened before, not as, obvious, or not as overt. I'm glad that it's happening now, because it is definitely needed to be able to handle so much. There's lots that an athlete would have to handle. So
name, image, and likeness brings on a lot more. I teach again at Hampton, and in one class I have 15 football players.
Okay.
And first I have to let them know I understand their world. So I have to talk about football. So actually I had a speaker yesterday, because I have a garden full of resources. I had one of my my people used to work for the college football playoffs. She works for Utah Jazz now. But I said, look, I need you to speak to my class because we're talking about the NCAA and the structure and the power structure, how power is one of the reasons why things happen the way they happen. And I said, if you would just come and talk about, the conversation led itself to college football playoffs. And I said, well, the NCAA does not run the college football playoffs. They looked at me like I was crazy. I said, no. I said, your homework is to tell me who actually runs the football playoffs. Now, there's one division of football that is under the NCAA, but the Power 5, they play within, it's called College Football Bowl System, where the athletic directors and the presidents run their own thing, which is the conflict between them and the NCAA. And they don't want the NCAA because they want to keep their money. You see? And so I said, if you could come in and speak, then they'll know what I'm talking about, but plus I keep their interest. So then anything else I say, this is the first week of school. Anything else I say, I would have built a trust with them. And then I would say, they tell me their name. I tell them their number, their position. They were like, I said, I know football. I'm at the game. And I go to the game. I dap them up before the game is up. And then when the game is over, I say, yeah, I see you. I do my head nod. I see. And they were like, so you gotta let them know that you again, I do staff retreats for athletic departments, leadership piece. I had an institution to ask me to work with the coaches to keep their players from going to the portal. So I created this game. Remember the TV show, The Newlywed Game? Well, I created a game called Newly Committed Game.
Okay.
Because if a kid thinks that you know them more than just what you can do for them, you're going to have them for life.
Yeah, relationship.
But, yeah, exactly. Come with a trust factor. So this is why they don't trust. But you got to earn their trust.
Absolutely.
Just because you're their coach and you pay for a scholarship and you think you're a father figure, that's not the case. You're like, no, you're not my father. They're going to tell you, I'm grown. Okay, they're going to tell you that. So you have got to earn that. So I did three areas. I said, so I had all the coaches lined up, and I would interview the key players. I said, keep this player in mind with this question. Did any of your student athletes participate in any social justice activities over the summer? If you don't know that, that's a problem.
Right.
Okay. I said, we just had COVID. Is anybody in your players losing anybody to COVID? If you don't know that, that's a problem. Okay. That goes to the mental health piece. Okay. And then the other piece, I said, social justice, name, image, and likeness. Do you know what they want to do after school? After they finish playing? You know, and if they want to do that, have you had the financial conversation? Because they're watching what everybody else gets. You get a free car, free gear, but guess what? You still gotta pay taxes on that. They don't know that free does not mean free. So you don't have to be down with the name, image, and likeness because the whole piece is by state and not by the NCAA. So they can do it whether you want to or not, because they have to have the ability to do that, because it's not contingent upon you approving of their deal or not their deal. They have the right to have it. You cannot have a policy as the football coach that said nobody can't name, image, or likeness because you can't take their scholarship if they get a deal. All right. So the point is, you need to be helpful with that, and you can't educate them about things that are going to hurt them with that. If you're concerned about the chemistry of the team, being concerned about that, you need to work on that, and you have to decide it's not going to be a distraction.
Yeah.
And so these are things I try to tell coaches in order to get the buy-in with their players. So,
what do you say to the coaches who answered no to like all those questions? You just listed like 3 main questions that you ask coaches. What are the ones who say no and they have no interest in asking that? They have no interest in knowing that about their players. How have you addressed that?
Well, here's the thing. So dial back. Who asked me to come do the workshop? Their supervisor. So he or she gets to see what you're working with. Now, when I was in a conference office and I worked with all the presidents, this is before name, image, and likeness. And some of them incorporated and some of them did not. But I would show them their compliance. I would show them their graduation rate. And I was like, look, if a coach takes money to go recruiting, stay in a hotel, have a good time, go get a player, the coach is responsible for the success of that player because you gave them money. Now, if you didn't give them money and they got to go in the dorm and pick people and whatnot, then you really can't hold them accountable for it. But if the coach went out and recruited players, they need to be held responsible for the players, the retention of those players, and it needs to be in their contract. When you do that, when you hold people accountable for it, if you bring this child, again, social work, if you bring a kid from the hood and all they know how to do is fight, all right, if they don't even know how to fight, they have a gun. Don't you think they're going to bring that gun? Right. You should have known that. You should provide resources. Just because the season is over does not mean that your responsibility of a coach is gone. You need to have check-ins. You need to have some kind of activity. You know, something happens when the spring happens. People start getting to their feelings and they want to fight. I don't know. Something about recreational basketball. People want to show you up. So tell your ball players they can't be in the intramurals because the other player going to try to show your kid up. All right, what you going to have? A fight. Right. Be proactive. Again, I told you, I'm 54 years old. I've been in this business for 30 years. It's not really much. It's going to happen that I ain't never seen before. Right. No, I mean, what you're saying just makes, absolute sense. Cause I know that my son, whenever we travel, wherever we go, he is playing ball. Right. So we were in Puerto Rico, they speak Spanish. He's playing basketball with Spanish speaking players. He doesn't speak Spanish. You don't need to know how to speak the language to play ball, right? So no trouble, just point that, wherever we go, he plays. But I do remember being downtown in the city and just playing and how the guys, they do want to exactly what you say, show up. They want to say, oh, somebody did something or didn't do something. They want to argue, go back and forth. And it's like, you're doing everything but playing a game. So absolutely. So again, I'm glad that there are, things in place to address those type of situations, or at least to give resources or open the, the space to be able to talk about it. So that's good. And I'm sensing and feeling like it's a shift, that you've seen this shift over the 30 years you've been in this business, that you've seen a shift to this. Well, let me say this. I want to do some coaching for a second. Because your son, everywhere he goes, he wants to play a pickup game, right? Yeah. So he really, really, really should really think about Parks and Rec. Oh. Because. Yeah. And organize playoffs for sports. John, you see what I'm saying? Listening? Wait, hold on. John, you listening? This is for you. Yeah. Because everywhere you go, you do a pickup game. And here's the, if you see this is what I'm saying even about the discourse that we have. I keep trying to tell athletic administrators, okay, trash talk to other people is part of the game. I get that. But your point of being a fan is to encourage your team, not to talk bad about the other team. See, because the trash talk, because I told a student the other day, okay, so when you say you trash, depending upon where you come from, what does trash really mean? Mm-hmm. If you came from a trailer court, that means a little something else. You're right. You know what I'm saying? Right. So a volleyball player said, oh, you trash? You don't know what trigger that means. Mm-hmm. But if you want to help your team, you go ahead and you push your team. This is how our learning should be. Right. So if your son is on pickup games all the time, if you have structure, tournaments. He can have his own little tournament. You see?
Right.
Like if he got a pickup game, but because he's been trained to have, okay, where's your team? Okay, here's the bracket, double elimination. That cuts a lot of the discourse that happens because you're not trying to show nobody up because you're already on a team and you're making you're concentrating more about your team winning than me. Because again, if you understand, shirts and skin, and if you play pickup, you don't want to have to sit down, so you go next, next, next. But if you have a structured game, you ain't got to be trying to kill somebody to stay on there. You follow what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Okay.
And you know what? Let me share this because this is so interesting. So basically, I think he was 10 years old and he said, I want to create a park. He actually wanted to build his own park. So that was just something that was interesting. And then a home that we had a large backyard and he wanted to make a baseball field in our backyard. Which he didn't need to do because we live right next door to the park. But so all of these things are interesting that you're saying now that he should consider parks and recreation because he's kind of
it's in his blood.
Right.
It's
Right.
all in his mind. Look, again, you talking to a girl. If you came in my house and we were little girls, I want to tell you, we're going to play this board game first, and then this one second, and then this one third. Whoever wins this game is going to go first on this one. And all my friends are going to like, she bossy. I've been bossy for 50.
She's a leader.
Yes. Oh, yeah. I always say that. That's why I call myself a leadership strategist for athletic department. You see? So that's in his whole system. Because, I remember one of the guys I grew up with was a pastor. And he was trying to raise money for a recreation place. I said, you got a parking lot? He said, yeah. I said, go buy you some portable basketball, and then you got don't wait for somebody to do it for you. Just go buy those two things. Right. He invited me to the ribbon cutting and everything. I was just talking, girl. I didn't know big old thing.
I love that. Okay, so we've been talking about sports like for a long time, loving a conversation. And it does apply to women as well, because initially we were talking about how you do coach women. And so I want to kind of go and specifically ask about, some of the coaching that you've done, whether it's in your executive coaching, whether it's, in any of your numerous roles. I know that you're running and have run into Black women and other women of color who haven't tapped into their power and their voice. What 3 actions will help them to own both?
Well, that's mostly what I do. And I will say, I had a beautiful opportunity Labor Day. I did a workshop for Delaware State's lacrosse team.
Okay.
And I know you're familiar with their lacrosse team being pulled over by the police in Georgia.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, and so so it comes twofold. I did a staff retreat for Delaware State Athletics, so I have to coach, in my training, and I did what I just told you, social justice, mental health. So I made an impact on her to think differently. Fast forward months later, she's faced with this with her student athletes. I believe that she and her players handled it beautifully. Okay. And so she is part of my tribe. She's going to be in the next magazine. And so again, I gave her tools. She was able to incorporate it. And then she asked me to get to do a retreat for just her girls on Labor Day. And the girls appeared to love it because I got great feedback. So one of the things is to know your ship, to guide your ship. What is really guiding you? Are you allowing society to guide you? Comparison, I need to be doing this because I'm this age. What is it that is really fueling you? So if you know it's you, then more than likely you're going to get where you want to be. But when you go do what somebody else wants you to do, that resentment will come in, and you'll have some stinking thinking. So then I go with what's really blocking you. And really blocking you is your thought process. Many women lack confidence to go for what they know. And that's what I really have to work on. I'll be really honest with you. For the last month, I had like at least 10 universities to let me know that they had openings. They asked me for recommendations. And I say to my people, I say, I first go to my own clients. And then I go to my students, because I got to know you. It's not like, you send me an email and do I know so-and-so? Yeah, I probably do know so-and-so. But at least I can say my client, and I can say how long I work with them. Because my name is my name, my brand. And I cannot, promote you for something that I don't know you. But also, if let's say you got a pink slip. If you still got some residue or some resentment, we have to deal with that, because you're going to carry that over here and over here and over here.
Right.
And I say, in order to get better, you get rid of better. And sometimes people don't want to hear that. Well, I'm not the one for you. If you want me to help you grow, it's going to be uncomfortable. That's why the whole thing is called a chat in the garden, because we're going to grow. My company's called Seeds of Empowerment. I'm all about growth and understanding that it's not going to be a happy process, because that's what it is. It's a process.
Yeah.
What I mentioned before about knowing your ship, I do an activity called a compass. What's really guiding you? And I'm going to really question you. That's what I really, really do, because almost everybody says, oh, you have me looking at things different. It's all about perspective and your mindset. So then when you get that straight, your confidence will flow. You'll actually be able to know your guiding principles, and you'll be able to project yourself for whatever position that you want.
I like those. And you know what? Also, one thing that I was thinking about is the language that we use. You talked about how you were little and people called you bossy. Me too. I know all about that, right? And so then we accepted that as the language, but now we know, no, that means I was a leader. I was, demonstrating leadership skills at an early age. And so I think language, what we tell ourselves about ourselves is important as well. And what we believe from other people, that's key. So know your ship, what's fueling you, and what's really blocking you. Awesome. So I want to pivot and honor my late sister, author and poet Soul True, by asking about dreams deferred, which was the title of one of her books. Please share a dreams deferred moment.
A dreams deferred moment. Well, it's interesting when they say, your plans and then God's plans. I just did a screenshot, and we think like this, and he's like this. And I'll take it from a personal standpoint, because when you're a high achiever, you really you think you're in control.
Right.
And you really do have a fear of failure, because you banked everything on you, your abilities. And so I had to be honest. I don't know if I got one right here. I actually was talking about a book. And no, I don't have it right here. It's behind me. Oh, you can't see behind me. So I wrote a chapter in the book. And the chapter of the book was public figure mask, extra stage left. And for me, it was being able to have both marriage and life and athletic administration. Because mostly there were no other women that looked like me doing it. And so for me, it was, okay, so when I failed at this piece, I felt a certain kind of way that I was a failure. And so that's like a dream deferred because you're going like, oh, I can't have it all.
Yeah.
But I'm happy to say that I am married to my college sweetheart. And
Yay.
I hear him walking by me right now.
Hi.
And we all say hi. And so God's plan is not a straight line.
Correct.
Yeah. And so but I need to go through all that to be able to help other women. So
Absolutely.
that was the opposite. That was the main piece, because if you're gonna be in this thing, people always want to know how you do it. And you can't talk about it's like sunshines and rainbows.
Right?
You know, and you know what? Truly, a valley is for protection. People don't really realize that. A valley is for protection. So when you say a dream deferred, I would say a dream protected.
Okay. I like that. I absolutely like that. And then you said, you failed at something. Did you fail or did you learn some lessons?
Oh yeah, that's definitely what I always say. There's no losses. They're only lessons, and so you
And it's
learn about
perspective.
yourself.
Right. It's
Huh?
perspective. It's what you choose to do with that,
The
right?
mindset. It's all
Mhm.
about mindset.
Yep.
It's a growth mindset versus a fixed mindset.
Abs-
And when I talk about go from bitter to better,
mhm.
if you can say, like I just said, I needed to go through that so I can help the other women in this business. Because many women don't get into the business because they think they can't have a family.
Yeah.
And so it was even on my own podcast today. The lady was athletic director at Drexel. And I said, I know you're a mom. Tell us, how do you do it? And then how do you make sure you go work for a university that does allow your child to be on campus? You see, because that's what happens. We have young ladies that work all this hard to get here. And then they get married and then they have kids. And then they feel as if they are not supported and they get out the business altogether.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not until you see someone in the highest seat being, and the word balance isn't really the word. I would say ebb and flow.
Yeah.
You're able to do both because, again, athletics is seasonal. So therefore, it's not like you're always on. You know what I mean? And but so if you see someone that demonstrate this, then I can do it. So I mean, it's really disheartening when I see someone that I've worked with for years and years and years. I have a young lady that I worked with since college, and she finally moved up to like the number 2 role at the university, and she left because her child was going to be school age, and she didn't live in the same district as this place where she was working at.
Okay.
And she was like, my child comes first. I'm going to leave this job to be, because she didn't like the school district where her job was. And I mean, to her, it wasn't as if she was giving it all in. But I'll be honest, with selfish piece, I worked all this time to help her get where she wanted to be.
Right.
And so I would want it to be some kind of way that she could be able to do both.
Right. So her dream was deferred at that moment. So what is she doing now?
She just departed.
Oh, this is recent. Got it.
Mm-hmm.
Got it. Well, you mentioned about like, and really the way I'm going to phrase it is you mentioned your journey. Like you've gone, the journey, the path you traveled is so that you can have a story to tell somebody, which is pretty much how I lived 2022, how I live in general. But 2022 for me has been a year of living a dream lifestyle. So,
Mm-hmm.
what does this mean to you, and how are you living a dream lifestyle?
Controlling my time.
Controlling your time.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. I love it. Okay, there it is. Controlling your time.
Mm-hmm.
That is very important. That is absolutely important.
Yeah, I mean, it's not about how much money you make; it's how much money you spend, and what you spend it on. You should spend it on experiences versus materials.
Yes.
And experiences includes the people that bring you joy.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I really try to avoid. I mean, honestly, it could be family members. I try to avoid being around folks that don't bring me joy. You know what I mean? You know, so I'm not gonna tell them to bring me joy. I'm just trying to like calendar is full. I really can't make that.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. Like I'm so for those who are just listening, I'm like nodding my head. I've been nodding my head throughout this whole conversation because a lot is resonating. I mean, absolutely all of this and that controlling your time because this summer, like I mentioned to you, I retired in June. And so for the summer, it was like I'm not on a clock. You know, I really never was on a clock, but I'm not on a, you know, I'm not trying to do anything unless it's something that really brings me joy. It wasn't like, okay, what time is it? I need to get up at a particular time. You know, I need to be here or there, like none of that. And even if I, you know, signed up for, let's just say a virtual something, you know, okay, either I attended it or I didn't. The point was I was controlling my time. And it's an absolute beautiful thing when you're able to do that. So Monique Smith, I have enjoyed this conversation. We could talk about sports, you know, for a long time because I have questions about some other things, but I'm not even gonna go there. You know, and I'll just throw out the things like I could talk, you know, ask you what you feel, how you feel about NIL. To me, what I know about it, I think it's good that the students are allowed to be able to get money because the whole thing around the NCAA and all those restrictions is just, to me, it's just a lot, like how they own an individual. So that's just one thing, but we don't have to go there. And the other one,
I want to say one word.
okay.
Entrepreneurship. If we teach our student athletes that they're already entrepreneur, they can control their own brand and not look for somebody else to dump some money with them. That's education.
There it is. And the other one, I'm just gonna throw it out here, but we don't even have to talk about it. But I just saw something on social media about an owner of one of the teams. I think it might be basketball team, and how he was totally out of pocket. Got a $10 million fine. It's what came to mind for me was somebody who many years ago lost their team, but we ain't gotta go there.
But well, I have a question. I saw that I was watching the WNBA games. And then after the game was over, I had the TV, but I turned the volume down and I saw where he was being fined. I don't know what he said. Do you know what he said?
Well, he pretty much said what that other guy had said a number of years ago and lost his team. Yeah. And then there was more to it than just that. But I'm thinking, did they, after that situation, did they bring this new ruling to whereas you get a fine and the fine is 10 million?
I think as the kids would say, woke, a new consciousness to know that patrons, fans are looking to see who are social responsible. And it's going to hurt your brand if you do that. So therefore, it's like a character conduct penalty like anything else. And so that's where that's coming about. Because again, people are not going to pay for tickets. People are not going to come. The best players aren't come to play for you. It's just like I just said about coaches. Do you know your kids engaged in social justice?
Right.
You know, and so you're tainting the brand. If you will take my brand and we're gonna tank, I'm gonna get my money from you because I'm gonna lose money from over here.
Right. I can see that. And I think some of the people were kind of like alluding to that. So for those who are, you know, listening or watching, like you know, you can look it up on social media as to what we're talking about. But you know, we're not going to go deep into all of that because our conversation is about elevating the voices of women of color. But those are, you know, since we are talking about sports, those things just were like top of mind.
Well, it's interesting. So we can talk about women. You think about what's going on with how the Washington Redskins finally went from Redskins to Commanders. It wasn't just the Indian piece, because Native Americans, they didn't change. But when they got hit for sexual harassment of the cheerleaders, and then other things happen, it becomes a compound, and the place is a hotbed for discourse again. Harassment, not a good place to work. That's why they're doing so much investigating. You see? So it's a compound of, it's just unlearning. I get it. An older man says, and I corrected many an old man. Because they just, I remember one guy said something like, we were talking about money. And he was like, they're raping us.
Oh, Lord.
I said, that's not the term we want to use.
Right.
He was talking about somebody was taking money for him.
Mm-hmm.
But they don't, it's called locker room talk. And we have got to correct the locker room talk. Actually, in my class, I call it barbershop talk. So I'm going to give you the real term. And you can't argue with somebody when you come up with the real term, they ain't got no comeback. So let me help you win the barbershop art conversation. Use the right terms, like microaggressions. I had a young man tell me, yeah, I heard somebody take a shot at me. He said, but I remember you saying that's called a microaggression. I said, yeah, it's like mosquito bites.
Right.
And after a while, they all come together and you got a big infection and you blowing up,
Mm-hmm.
And you don't know why, because that thing on your nerves like 10 months ago. And it keeps happening, and then bam.
Absolutely. I mean, you know what? And that I remember seeing a video about the mosquito bite, and it definitely represents it well, right? The message, it absolutely represents it well. And then you're right, it keeps happening. And then at some point, you gotta, express yourself, and it may not come out the best way. So we do, we should address things as they come. But that's a learning as well. Like you said, it's a learning, plus often there's consequences, like, are we prepared for those consequences? And I think that a lot of times we don't necessarily address it because of that, because of the unknown, the uncertainty.
The reprimand, you're concerned about the reprimand.
Right.
Now I'm gonna tell you again, 50 years old and older, we think about that. But these young people, they're going for it.
They are.
They're not putting up with it.
Nope. And I love it. I absolutely love it. I'm like, yes.
I have to count to 10 myself, and I go like, okay. I'm gonna give you a perfect example of an unlearning. So when I was athletic director, we could take a young lady's athletic scholarship if she became pregnant. It was you're not able to perform.
Right.
Fast forward maybe 20 years later, young lady takes to the court, which is true. It takes two people, and only half the person being penalized. And I was like, oh yeah, that does make it sex discrimination. It should be parenting, because now we have maternity leave and paternity leave. You follow me? And so you see what I'm saying? It's like an unlearning. You see? Because how you socialized. And so now I teach it differently. A young lady that's 2 years younger than me is the one that brought it to my attention. Yes, it is sex. Yes, it is a Title IX case, because only the female is penalized, but it took both to be able to make the baby. And I was like, oh, and then I had a student athlete who was a male, and he had a doctor's note for excusing because his girlfriend, not wife, girlfriend had an appointment with the doctor. And so he was excused to go to the doctor's visit. You see, I couldn't penalize him. First, he had a real doctor's note. You follow me? At first, I was like, oh, he just ain't got a class. No, he came with a real note, girl's name, due date, all that. I was like, okay, new day.
But okay, but then his scholarship isn't impacted.
No, now you can't take any money from a female.
Okay, period. Okay,
right, at all. I mean, we've been educated that it's a Title IX. case, because again, it's only the female. So just like we can't take money, it's like a temporary medical condition.
Okay.
And just like you broke your leg, you
Yeah.
can't take a scholarship. So just like that, you can take a
Wow.
scholarship. But
Wow.
on the flip side, if we give him that, then we also have to give it to the guy who's an athlete who has a pregnant girlfriend or a pregnant wife. He needs to be able to take time out to go to the doctors or go to Lamar's or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So I call it parenting policies for student athletes.
Yeah. It's a lot, right? It's a lot that goes on in your industry.
Yeah, and you gotta stay up on it. Got to stay up on it.
Right.
Got to stay up on it. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Oh, the evolution and a lot of it is positive. So that's great. So before we wrap, before we say goodbye, what would you like to leave the audience with?
Well, tell me again the name of the conversations. What?
An intimate conversation with women of color.
Okay. Oh yeah. There's really no competition. There's really no competition. As I told my students, actually this week, I said, we all come into this world from our perspective. Mm-hmm. But our perspective changed. When I was 5, I had a perspective. When I was 10, and when I was 12. But as I become exposed, my view widens. Okay? So, my 5-year-old and somebody else 20-year-old really can't be compared.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And even if we're 20 and 20, mm-hmm. my experiences back here define how I view things. So you still can't compare.
Correct.
But you can share and still grow from their experiences without comparing. There's no competition.
No, absolutely not. And for me, I compete with myself. If you want to say that, I want to be better than I was. I see this on a meme or whatever. I see it often on social media, but I want to be better tomorrow than I was today. And so that's my focus and impact other people. So I appreciate your perspective on there is no competition. Well, Monique Smith, I have enjoyed our conversation. I mean, we have talked so far. Those who are listening on your favorite podcast platform or watching on YouTube, make sure you continue to do so, share, subscribe, all those good things. And know that, when we're having an intimate conversation, it's no telling where we're going to go and what we're going to talk about. But it's all good. It's all educational, or it's something that you can take from all of our folks that we're talking to. So again, Monique Smith, thank you so very much. And I will see you all soon. Bye.